Hello, everyone, and welcome to Work in Progress. My name is Matt Bush, and on behalf of Great Place to Work, thank you for joining today's conversation. Today, we are lucky to speak with the founder and CEO of Fully Accountable, Vinnie Fisher. Fully Accountable, a Great Place to Work certified company, has excelled as a learning organization focused on leading with transparency and consistency for all of their people. Fully Accountable is a remarkable company as they have grown from 13 employees to almost 50 despite a global pandemic. With quick growth, most companies consider their workforce culture become secondary. However, Fully Accountable takes pride in maintaining their culture to amplify their success as a business. It's my great pleasure to introduce Vinnie Fisher, founder and CEO at Fully Accountable, who will share with us just how they have leveraged their culture as a foundation of their growth as a business. Fully Accountable was founded in early 2015. With his team, they built an outsourced accounting and fractional CFO company that provides a fully managed back office solution for e-commerce, CPG, tech-enabled, SaaS, and digital agencies. They recently made the Inc. 5000 list for the second year in a row as one of the fastest growing private companies in America. As a successful CEO, Vinnie has really developed talents for building and growing world-class teams. He has learned that a valuable company must grow beyond the shadow of the owner. So let's get into it. Welcome, Vinnie. It's a pleasure to have you join us today.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me. It's our honor, actually. Stuff like this, awards that amplify who we are as a company, it's super exciting because I speak around here so much about our greatest asset is our people. So to be able to be recognized by a prestigious organization like you guys is wonderful. And so I'm super excited to be here today.
Excellent. Well, we're excited to have you. Want to make the most of our time together, and I know you have great insights that you can share with us. So to start, can you tell us just a bit more about the mission and the vision of Fully Accountable? Just sort of who you are, what's your secret sauce?
Yeah, I'm not an accountant or financier, and so I'm a problem solution marketer in my career. And I had a large health and nutrition company, and I was doing what entrepreneurs do, solving a problem, but not really paying attention to the back office. Well, we wanted to do it a different way. I looked under the hood once I started to mature in business a little bit. I noticed that accounting and finance was kind of old and tired and hadn't kind of been updated in a long time. And so when I went out to go try to buy it from the marketplace, what we wanted didn't exist. So I sat down with my partners and said, hey, we can do this better. And we set out to do something different and to go on mission to change the lives of 10,000 companies by doubling their profit margin with a new, more modern way to run your back office. And here we are 6 years later with hundreds of clients and lots of people on the team, and we're on mission. And so our vision is to meet that goal, and we're going to do that in a variety of ways.
Great, that's amazing. It's great to learn more about what your business is and how it clicks, but also how you create a great place to work for the people inside the walls, not just the mission you pursue outside. And our conversation today isn't just how you managed to attain such amazing survey results. I've gone to look at them, and it's a remarkable level of consistency you have, but about the specific challenge of scaling your culture with growth. And particularly one areas of strength that I noticed is that I noticed that some of the changes in the very positive way that I've seen as you've grown is that equity was one of the biggest changes year over year, sense of around fair pay and fair treatment. Can you explain how you've managed to foster a sense of great equity at Fully Accountable?
I got to be honest with you, the opposite of that, the lack of equity has just never existed in our culture. And so, I've had the wonderful privilege of our COO being someone who's kind of been nurtured or mentored underneath. I found her in law school. Her name is Rachel. And it's more like a daughter in a lot of ways, but she's also my business partner. And, I don't know, we just kind of looked at the organism of our business. And so along the way, we've attracted great talent. What gender, what color your skin, who you are, whether you can dunk a basketball or not, weren't really relevant. And so this idea that we've been able to foster an environment where, you manage your career, we don't manage it for you. This idea that professionalism should go across dedication and it doesn't determined by your background or some of the, whether you're a male or female or other, things that historically has mattered in other organizations. And so because of that, and I think also, to be real, like some of my groundings in faith and who I care to be has just permeated across our organization. And so, I think there's so many answers to it, but we just always had a culture of kind of equity. And I think it's just natural to us. We didn't have to work at changing it. It's just something we've deepened over time.
Mm-hmm. Definitely makes sense. And given your ambitious goals of how you scale your business, growing from 13 to almost 50 over a year, let alone during a pandemic, is of course remarkable growth. But I'm curious about any strategy you've had around how you managed to grow your company while also building upon the strong foundation of your company's culture. And in particular, does your organization ever utilize survey results, like feedback you get from your employees, to figure out how to best make those improvements? And if so, I'd be curious to learn more about your best practices about how you leverage data and feedback from your employees to continue to grow your culture.
I even though I'm a lawyer by training and I had a law firm and I'm a professional, I'm not a professional qualified to serve in this organization because I set out to solve a problem I have. But this idea of professionalism is super important to us. And one of the ways we protect the consistency and excellence of what we deliver is not compromise on who joins our team. And one of the ways we protect against that is we actually have a triangle. We hire people based on effort, attitude, and ability. And we really guard who joins our team. Matter of fact, this year, I can't believe I'm saying this out loud live, but this year we're adding a fourth core value to our committed, competent, and caring, and it's community. We've kind of grown into a community and guarding that, not even during, right before the pandemic and even during this time, the marketplace was tight on work because employers were either overpaying or offering attractive benefits to take talent from other people's organizations. Well, even during that time, we didn't compromise on who joins our team, and we're quick to guard that. And so growing a service company can be daunting. Scaling one is a whole nother level because, if your direct labor quotient is the return on hours of people work, your labor component, it's different than a product company. You make your margin on people working. So our key component is labor, right? Work done. And so people on our team make everything, Matt. And so when we conquer fighting that, sometimes we work a little harder in our positions if we're, so to speak, staffed, even what we might call understaffed, because we would rather be understaffed than the wrong people on our team. And so that's probably the thing we have fought the most. And it's always going to be our number one problem, staff, right? Because that's no different than a product company who's always struggling with inventory. We're always struggling with making sure the right people are on our team.
Thank you for those insights. I think that, who you have to fill those roles certainly sort of sets the parameters for what can be successful in your organization. And I get questions all the time around how people can replicate this success. At questions like successful programs and practices. So when you set the foundation in the first place for how you created a company culture that you thought was sustainable, impact for employees, and could grow as your company grew, what were some of the things that you implemented in terms of those programs that you thought were the most impactful for sustaining a strong company culture?
It's really, it's funny. I didn't answer the second half to your question earlier because I think this question teed back up a reminder of that part. Like, I think it's important to speak to your people. I think you got to talk to them and you got to give them objective ways to answer. And so I don't really believe in a culture of nice. A culture of nice is dangerous. A culture of nice acts a layer of corporateness that people say one thing and then do another. I believe in a transparent culture where we speak about everything. And so I live a life in a fishbowl, and I'm very open in my leadership style about addressing conflict. I even welcome some form of critique and conflict at the executive team and management team level. So one of the things we do is we foster permission to speak up about the things that are working, and more importantly, the things that could be improved upon. And so we survey. We are always asking our people what's working, and more importantly, what isn't working. What would you like to see improve in the deliverable to our clients? What would you like to see in the way we communicate with each other? And so we listen to those things. And one of the things we do is, we run a hybrid environment. We have people in our corporate offices, and then 2/3 of our team live all around North America. And so we have to really work at intimacy, communication. And so we do things like daily stand-ups, a weekly company-wide meeting. We address the things that aren't working. And so we try not to over meeting, but at the same time, we listen to feedback. So if I'm either not accessible to our young people or vision isn't out there, we'll speak about those things. Or, if a certain deliverable or the way we communicate with clients isn't working, our people, I don't care what level you are, at CEO all the way down to the dishwasher, even though we don't have one, and everything in between, your voice matters here, and we actually implement things regardless of whether you're one of our data analysts or the CEO.
Great. And you actually may have just answered this question in that answer right there, because as you listed these practices out and these practices of transparency and communication and empowering employees to speak up, that may be the formula right there. And we touched upon this earlier about how you managed to create a strong sense of equity. There's a particular part of equity that's very, very tricky for most companies, and it's around the idea of pay, fair pay specifically. And typically the pattern that we see is as companies grow, perceptions around pay tend to become less favorable along with growth. However, you've actually managed to, at Fully Accountable, improve perceptions around fair pay and compensation, which is something that is proven very difficult to do. Typically, speaking from Great Place to Work's perspective, those tend to be some of our lowest scores on our survey are around fair pay and profit sharing. So how did you manage to improve perceptions around pay?
We communicate about it, right? So I'm it's always shocking to me. And by the way, in all fairness, I did this in some of my previous organizations that we built. I wasn't always as open about speaking about the basic relationship between an employer and an employee is pay for work, clear role, clear expectation. And so we talk about the fundamentals of pay as it relates to the job. We speak about it very openly. We talk about where the market sits, what kind of pay you're being compensated with. We show summaries, but that's only one part of it. It's funny how there's another part of it. Once the basic needs of a relationship are made, where I promise to always fund payroll, you promise to show up and do your work, that basic exchange. Above that are other stuff. Like, what are the things you do to celebrate mission and people's successes and highlight? So we built this really cool tool called the Props program, where people in our company can do shout outs internally in our about things that someone's done. So the funny thing is, when you look at these major surveys that are done about companies, typically pay ranks 4th or 5th as most important. As long as you're paying someone fairly, the objective feedback, knowing you're on mission, doing a good job, having people work you like to do work with, recognition, these things rank above some of the fair pay scale. So you got to meet fair pay, because you want to mess up your company, don't fairly pay people for what they do, and address it. When they say things like you're not, address it. But then above that are all these other intangibles. And we really work very hard at those, like surprise gifts to your house, and maybe do some things that just individually recognize you and aren't corporate in nature. And then this peer-to-peer feedback that everyone gets to read is a big deal. And so those other intangibles, to me, I think speak to why we get such a good grade, even more than just meeting the basic exchange of fair pay for fair work.
Vinnie, I wish I could take you everywhere I went with me, because that is such a great message for all employers around fair pay. It's not, part of it is, yes, fueled by the number on the paycheck relative to what they think is fair, but there's also the other intangibles that make up the entire of their experience. And I think you illustrated it beautifully. So thank you for that. I hope that people were writing that down, because that's a great insight that I'm sure will be very helpful for a lot of employers around the country and around the world. Shifting gears slightly, there is a notable improvement also in your company's data, although notable improvement from an already strong score. It's even more consistent and positive with how your employees feel about how Fully Accountable contributes to the community around you. So what can you attribute this community to, in terms of this improvement to, in terms of how you step up and engage the community around you? And how do you scale your programs as you grow in scale in terms of your staffing to also increase the scale of the impact you have in the community more broadly?
When I sat down and kind of wrote out like this vivid vision of where I thought we were going, um, 3 years ago now. It's kind of now time for a refresh as we get ready for our company retreat. Some of the things I got feedback on was we're doing a great job with our companies and who we service, but what's our footprint look like in the community? And what are we doing to civically help for what we've been given, what we've been entrusted with to help others? And I was able to read through some of those surveys and realize, we could be a little bit more outward focused. Since we're a North American company, we don't really have a huge local presence where our corporate offices are, but that wasn't a good enough excuse to not start to give back. So we started doing things like involve in food drives, and we started to do things like, wait a minute, why don't we help things like educate our people, invest in helping them move along professionally? Let's come alongside the accounting industry as a whole. Then let's also come alongside the type of industries of people we serve. And so I openly challenged our people. Let's start thinking civically. Let's start doing that. And so Deb, my wife, and I, we went first. We started doing those things a little more and being a little bit more open with it. And gosh darn it, the infectiousness of that just started to play out a little bit. And so I think people just grabbed onto it. And so, we do things like participate in stuff, show up to a board meeting, to a non-for-profit, or get involved in some local church thing, or actually care about a cause and do it, not just kind of lip service it. And so then support our people around the country. If, I think of our gal up in South Dakota, she wanted to be part of this feed children locally drive, and we did it with her. We didn't go there, but we did it by the form of showing up with a matching fund for people who did it. And little things like that, Matt, over and over and over throughout our organization showed that we just wanted to do more than just actually have a bunch of happy clients. And I'll tell you the one thing I haven't told you that I think is a big deal. Our people are our greatest asset. And so when what we do is manage money for people. And so the thorn in the paw is when they don't have much of it. But I'm the person that stands between a tough client and our people. And I put our people first. And so stuff like the question you asked prove that over and over, that we care so much about our community that we do things to just kind of support it.
It's fantastic. It's a great vision for what community engagement can look like and how you can really utilize the passions of your employees to make impact in the community around you. And you mentioned the strength of your people, which makes me want to focus on some of the growth that you've had. You recently made the Inc. 5000 list for the second year in a row and one of the fastest growing companies in America. And so we've seen how you managed to scale. And I know that you probably have more ambitious goals to continue to grow your staff by the next year. So what are your plans around meeting this ambitious goal of continued growth and continuing to, so far so good in terms of scaling your culture with the growth, but how do you plan on staying focused on your culture as you also focus on growing your staff, on building upon the success you've had in the last few years?
Early on, it's funny. We used to play the David and Goliath card a lot, right? We were the little ones with the chip on our shoulder, and we got to go fight the big industry and win it for the man, and we can change things. Well, now we're kind of the big guy. And so we got to look a little differently at some of those things. So I think consistency and excellence. So I think one of the things that we're working on right now, which is super cool, is to improve our onboarding process for our team and set out a 30, 60, 90 and full year plan of helping someone improve in their career. And what are we going to do to meet them at day one, get them ingrained into the DNA of our culture? And what are we going to do to help them so that a year from now, we've been a really good steward of them placing a season of their career with us? And I'll tell you, I'm super excited about that because you've seen all the stats. Turnover is massively expensive to an organization. And because we keep investing in this onboarding and training of our people, I think they just feel loved and they want to stay. And I think it's going to be a massive weapon of ours as we start to tackle other technologies that I think are important to this marketplace, is the consistency and excellence of our people. And so I think doubling down on them and putting more training and educational initiatives in place. Like last year, we just launched a mentor program where we take our CFOs and our executives and we're asked to mentor people across the company. And what we've heard back from that is more professionalism, more help me come alongside me, almost like a discipleship program. Help me be better at what it is I want to do with my career. And man, the more we keep doing that, we're going to win this award again. I'm confident of it.
And I see no reason why not. Everything indicates that you're doing everything you need to be doing. And so I'm learning a lot right now about this. And you mentioned one word I wanted to key in on going to our next question, which is you mentioned the word turnover in terms of it's not just about attracting the right people, it's also about retaining them. And you mentioned how your onboarding program was a way of developing professionalism and giving them a strong foundation. But beyond the onboarding process, I'm curious about some of the other ways in which you retain your talent. And one key data point that I saw in your data was around special and unique benefits, an improvement of 17% actually in your data. So, and especially given that it happened during last year where we were in quarantine during the COVID-19 pandemic, one might lead to the conclusion that it means that you actually expanded or improved upon your benefits during the pandemic that we've gone through in the last year. Is that the case? So you actually stepped up a bit in that time of great need and uncertainty for people? Or if not, what was the key, you think, behind the improvements you've seen in how employees perceive how special and unique your benefits are?
You know, one of our storied Chief Justices of the United States is a gentleman by the name of Oliver Wendell Holmes. And he said, our system is only as great as the representation of the least of us. And when we went through this disruption or still in parts of it, you know, I decided to stand up and lead in a way that said, we're going to meet each of us at the least of us, not at where we expect people to be. And so things like, you know, give everyone room to process in a certain way what's actually happening and create a voice. You know, one of the things leaders bank on that we don't even realize we bank on is routine. And this breakdown or shutdown or whatever we want to call the way we would have changed doing business took away the permission of routine. And so everyone would stare kind of at me or us and say, what do I have permission to do today? They almost like needed me to create routine for them. And so in the absence of leadership, people will perish. So I stepped up and every day kind of reminded people of where we are, what's going on, give them room to process it at the level they're at and not force people to be something where they weren't ready to be. And, you know, I'll tell you, I'm real thankful that I learned a category of language that increased compassion, increased empathy, increased kindness. These are words. And so I was able to find replacement to help people like shelter through a storm, and that we're going to get through this if we like can trust in like things like perseverance and like we're going to see the other side of this. And so because I showed up more, I had to be more present and do things repetitively to help people remind them that we're going to get through this. And I'm thankful to have done that. It's been a tough year. I'm kind of looking forward to banking on a little routine, to be honest with you. But I also, knowing where we are now, what's happened in our executive team, I'd do it again.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you so much for giving us more clarity. I'm sure that a lot of people are still sifting through what the last year was for them and how they can care for their employees in that time. So hearing about your experiences and insights certainly is very valuable in this time. When it comes to shifting again back to the idea of attracting talent, I know we're talking about retention, but are there ways in which you do use some of your employee feedback data in order to attract top talent to scale your culture at the same time? So in what ways do you think that getting feedback from employees, you mentioned earlier how culture is key in finding the right people to fit that culture, something that it's important to not compromise on, but what are ways in which you leverage your feedback in order to help scale your company culture and your people count?
I think when you can deal with defensiveness as a leader and you can help your executive and management team like look through honest feedback, and if you can get real honest feedback from your people, right there alone you're doing a big deal. Like you're getting some of the most loving information you can receive from your people. And what we do with that information is pay attention. You know, if someone's like, I'm not hearing enough from you as to whether I'm doing a good job in my role, then that means we're not providing you objective measurements to be able to honestly measure your own performance, regardless of hearing from me subjectively or not. So when we are interviewing with people, we already know that organizations lack certain parts of that. So we amplify and show them the things. We eat our own dog food. We use indicators. We have feedback. We show our surveys. We show people what it is they're missing professionally that we provide here. And I think that excites people. When you're working from home, and 2/3 of our people are called homies, people are always intrigued by, we call them homies. That's a fun story how that started, but it stuck. But helping a homie manage is different than helping one of our corporate people manage. And so we listen. They're each a little different, but at the end of the day, they're both on some mission. And have I articulated vision clear enough? And after basic needs of a fair role and a fair pay, it's really on us to have we casted a net wide enough to something we're going to do to impact others. And are people excited to get on that? Because at the end of the day, people in accounting signed up to balance things. They didn't necessarily sign up to necessarily do people, but the reality is they did. They just didn't want to have to figure it out on their own. And so can we help them get excited about helping others? Well, we are, and it's proving it. And so what can we do to help more? I think we just amplify those things out, Matt. We show, and we're honest. We'll tell them, here's the things that haven't worked. Can you help us improve on those? And people are like, man, you guys are weird. You talk about the things that don't work. And you know what? I think that transparency helps us bring in some pretty cool people.
This has been really insightful in terms of seeing how a successful CEO develops talent and builds world-class teams. And I know that it's hard to whittle down all of your insights and wisdom into some key talking points, but I'm curious if you had any words of advice for other CEOs of small businesses specifically that are getting ready to scale. So as they're getting ready to really grow their business, what are, for example, like 3 specific things you'd recommend that they do? And anything that you've learned, it could be something you mentioned already, but want to reiterate. It could be something that you wish you knew that you're grateful you know now. So what advice would you give other CEOs of small companies looking to scale?
So I think it's one of the things a leader needs to do with small companies, look at himself, herself, and the leadership team that you have in the company. And what are really the true core values? So if you look at Fully Accountable's caring, competent, and committed, and you look at the notes around it that we describe to people, that's my heartbeat. And I believe in the small organizations, the leadership team, she dictates a lot of the heartbeat of the company. And if you don't know those things about yourself or who you are, then you're going to have a really hard time attracting people that beat in their heart the same way, and you're going to have a heart attack. So if you want to really have an impactful company, understand those core values that matter to you as a person, and then clearly articulate those in a way to attract people who are on that mission. And I'll tell you, I wish I'd have done that sooner in my career, but the fact that we have it now, it's a big secret weapon. And I'd say over and over, do those things. Those values of our company are not just some talking point that we pulled off Apple. That's us. And if you want to know more about us, all you got to do is read those. And so when we're interviewing, we use that kind of scorecard, so to speak, as a way to protect making sure you're the right fit on this team.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much for those final key insights and words. I believe we are at about time right now. I wish we could spend all day together going through this because scaling culture with growth is such a complicated and nuanced topic that you make sound so easy just in the way in which you've done it so masterfully. So thank you so much for insights. Thank you for standing on a bold vision of the future and leading with transparency and accountability in your organization, showing firsthand that it can be done and can be done very well. And thank you, everyone in the audience, for joining us today. This recording of the conversation will also be shared on our resource page. If you ever want to go back, and I know I'll want to be going back and taking note of some of the key things that Vinnie shared with us today. So we're grateful you shared time with us. And on behalf of Great Place to Work, thank you again for joining us today, and take good care.
Matt, thanks for having me, buddy.
Thanks, Vinnie.